And we're back.
It's been 2 years exactly to the date that we're going to release this. May 5th, 2023 was the last time that we posted an episode. And we were in Florida when we recorded that. And we already knew we were going to come here, where we are now, to the Dominican Republic. So let's start there. Let's close the gap. What happened the last 2 years? Where have we been? Why did we leave? And everything that has occurred in between.
It's been fun. It's
Yeah.
been challenging. And just in this process of talking about bringing our podcast back, it's been exciting.
Yes. Lots has happened, as some of you may know, and the last 2 weeks we spent them in the mountains in Jarabacoa here in Dominican Republic. And what came from that is how we have to tell our story, how we have to speak during these times, how we process everything that we're going through, because we know that there's many people who don't, or who simply have no idea how other people are going through this and how they process. And I think that it's important for us to share this with our community. Just the same reason why we started the podcast before is through sharing our truths, other people are able to have their own realizations and also help themselves.
Yeah, so we last podcast was May 5th, 2023, as Giselle said. And we had taken a break. We were at that time, we had just moved to Dominican Republic. So real quick, we moved there on the 16th of May. I know that May 5th was the last time, but I backdated the date. So there's a little confusion there for anybody that's putting the timeline there. So May 5th, what that episode, we talked about conscious commitment. We talked about conscious leadership. We just had arrived to the country. There was an earthquake, if you remember that. It was a first experience. It was amazing.
I think we were only here like a week. And we were in Santiago, actually, Santiago de los Caballeros. We were staying there for a month. That's where my father's family's from. And it was early morning. And that was like, did we just feel an earthquake?
It was a legitimate, it was a 5.0 on this Richter scale.
Yeah.
We were on the third floor, and it jarred us awake from a dead sleep. The kids were screaming.
And everybody ran to the bed, and they're like, "What was that?" Earthquake. We've come here a bunch of times. We've never experienced an earthquake, but we know they happen. And yeah, we looked it up, and yep, there it was, pinged that an earthquake had happened. So that was kind of arriving here. We were like, "Oh snap! Is this going to be life here now?" But that was actually the only one we felt. We haven't felt one since. But yeah, we started our month in Santiago, like I said, because my family's from there. We purchased our first vehicle there. And then we headed here to the North Coast because we had been here in 2017 and we loved the ocean. And we were like, let's head back to the North Coast and see if we find a place to live in. So when we arrived, we were staying in Puerto Plata at an Airbnb, and we started looking at homes in the area. Scouring. We didn't know where. We know we wanted to be in the North Coast, and it was anywhere from like Puerto Plata as far as like Cabarete. We had no idea where the communities were, where anything was. We just knew we wanted to be near the ocean on the side. So we almost ended up in Custambar, which now we joke that is a retirement community. My papers here are falling. We joke that it's a retirement community because when we went there, there's a lot of retired folks on that side of town. There's also younger people, but it's a tiny little community right on the beach, a gated community. And we got a house like right outside of that, and it was like perfect 5-minute drive to the beach. And we're like, yeah, we love it. And right before we were supposed to move in, it turns out that what they initially had said that it was only going to be us and one other couple on the property, we find out that there's like 2 other people living on the property. And I was like, wait a minute, this is not the agreement. You said it was going to be us and one other couple that isn't even there all the year. Like they travel back and forth and they're only here a few days out of the year. And we're like, if there's more people living on the property, like that's not what we wanted, because if you listen to our last episodes, or our family, Linabelle, our fifth daughter, was diagnosed with a brain tumor at 21 and had epilepsy. So she isn't all the way there. Like her brain doesn't function the way other kids her age function. So we didn't feel comfortable having other people on the property, doors being open.
That we didn't know.
It was just for us more of a safety because of her. Because at the time she was still running away, and boundaries was like a big thing for her. So we're like, we need to be in more control of our boundaries physically for her. And there was only one pool, and it was shared. She also does not like putting on clothes. She was constantly naked. And I didn't know who else was living there. Like, we hadn't even seen these people. And I was like, yeah, that's crossing too many boundaries for me. So I was like, we got out of the contract, and we started looking then on the other side, closer to like Sosua, but not the city center, closer to the airport.
Fortunately for us, we were here in the June timeframe, so we were in Santiago for the first 3 weeks, as just so it said. So when we got here in June, we were looking for camps and things to put the kids in to get them acclimated to this area, and we came across a Dominican surf school. And so where we live now, we have not been here before in this exact location. We've been in Cabarete, which is about 5-minute drive, and this is considered that area, but we had never been here. So when we came for the Dominican surf school, the beach was amazing. It was beautiful. It looked like paradise, and we were like, we need to be
on
here.
This beach.
However, as you all know, Giselle and I, we are military veterans, and we budget. We have a budget that we're living in, and this area is a little higher. It's more of American pricing compared to where we had chose. So we decided to look.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's American pricing, but it's more expensive than the local community or like where we were living prior to this. This is a little more expensive.
So we decided. We found a place. It popped up on Facebook. We went. It was the third floor. There was nobody living there. It was a brand new building, and we decided
it was a penthouse suite, 2 floors, 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms.
Electricity included. Like I'm talking about, it didn't.
It was a jet.
It landed at the right time, and so we moved, and that is where we hunkered down for that year. We came to this location where we're at now, in Encuentro, and the boys and myself surfed. And
after the surf school, it was solidified that our kids were going to be surfing a lot. So we were driving 20, 30 minutes in traffic, sometimes 45 to an hour, depending on, the traffic times, to come to the surf beach from where we were living. And after a while, like, we got tired of it. We're like, this drive is not it. Like, we don't want to be in the car for this many hours a day. There was days we made the trip twice a day. So, like, driving 4 times back and forth. Because all their friends were on this side. And everybody they wanted to hang out with. And everybody's birthdays. And we told ourselves, when this contract ends, or if we ever have to, like, move here again, we're just moving straight to the beach town. Like, we're not even going to look anywhere else. Like, we're going to be a walk away from the beach. And now we are. We're a 5-minute walk. 5 minutes, you walk, we're at the beach. And this is where we wanted to be.
Well, and also the reason why we moved here to the Dominican Republic was because we both knew that Liam was coming with fifth.
Yes.
And it was about getting help. It was about honing in as a family. And where we were staying was also below our budget, like what we had budgeted for living accommodations. Yeah. So we had household help. We had everything that we had envisioned moving here to help us thrive as a family and reconnect and spend more time with the kids. So initially the drives weren't that bad because we were with the kids and we were spending time and we were going to the beach and not worrying about cleaning the house or cooking food.
We didn't have to cook. We didn't have to clean. We didn't have to do laundry. We didn't have to do any of that. Like, all of that was taken care of. We had 2 women working with us from a month after we got here. We hired one, and after the 2nd month, we hired the 2nd woman, and they basically took care of everything household. Because that was one of the things that we had discussed when moving here, was I didn't want him taking over all the things that I was already doing, or even the things that he was helping with, because so many parents think that having a new baby, like, the mom should be off the hook of everything. And I believe the mom and the dad should be off the hook of most things, because it's also a new experience for the father and for him to integrate, for him to bond with the baby. And I'm not trying to take away, like, obviously the mother and the baby's role should take precedence to everything, because that is the mom, but the father is also part of that dynamic. I don't see it as just like, oh, I'm the only one. Now you go take over all the household things and take care of all the other kids. Plus, it wasn't our first or second, like it was our fifth child. Like that's a lot of kids to look after, to take care of, to do things for. So I was like, I want us both to be in a place where we could truly enjoy this child, where we can truly drop in, take it in with no other worries other than being there, like being completely present for this child. And we were able to do that. And that was amazing because that was our goal coming here, and we were able to accomplish that. So that was our big reason for moving to Dominican Republic, was being able to still have our American income, but live way below the means of what it is to live in America today, or at least in the United States of America. It's, we wouldn't be able to do what we did here had we stayed in the United States of America.
And this is just a random public service announcement, but for anybody that's listening to this, it is cheaper to live outside and travel outside the United States of America. Now, it takes some work in regards to, like, you do have to plan and do some research, because most people, when they do travel, are going to like these tourist spots,
Yeah.
so they're getting tourist pricing.
Like, for instance, what we just explained, where we live here, you're going to pay triple what you would pay where we were living before, because it's attracting tourism to this area. Now, we lived just 20, 30 minutes from here, and it was, like I said, a third of what we pay here. So, it's up to you and navigating your budget and where you live. And there's still plenty of beautiful places to live here that are inexpensive. But for us, it's about this beach. It's about this community. It's about the people who are here. It's about their friends. So for us, it's worth. And honestly, what we're paying in gas, because gas is a little expensive here on the island. What we're paying gas driving back and forth, now we're just throwing it into rent. This morning, we had to go drop off the kids at their surf camp for this week, which gives us time to record this for you guys. And we walked. We didn't have to drive. Like, throw on your backpacks. Let's go. And everybody just walks. I didn't even wear shoes because there's puddles of water everywhere, and your shoes just get muddy and wet. And I just walked barefoot. So
I personally feel right now that we jumped into this without really explaining what our vision for this upcoming season, this little 10-part series.
Well, we're going to do it remember the intro.
Okay, well, Either way, we have a vision. So we're talking now back in the Dominican Republic about something that happened a year and a half, 2 years ago. So we're trying to close that gap as we dive into this upcoming season.
Just where we left off. Yeah. So May 5th to now, of 2023 to 2025, like what happened in between us moving here. We had Liam.
Well, so we haven't got to Liam yet, but yeah, now we're in the baby.
Yeah.
Liam. That takes us to August.
Yeah, it takes us to August. So yeah, we had a new baby, and then we were just living life. Lumi cracks her head open in December, a day before.
We'll talk about this in future episodes as well. But I got back into a cycle of creating an organization. Jumped on with a gentleman that we started a fatherhood organization, helping men, and got heavily involved into that throughout this process, which was kind of out of alignment in why we came here. So
I wouldn't say out of alignment in the sense, like, you were doing something that called to you, to what you feel like was your purpose. And just being home and being just with the kids and not doing anything like that feels weird, especially for him, who spent almost 14 years in the Navy, working every day. Like, these last 3 years have pretty much still been his adjusting to civilian life, and not only civilian life, but also not having jobs. Like,
well, and also being like a full-time parent.
Yeah, being a full-time parent, and we're going to speak to this, more deep in other episodes of, his experience. And I'm sure on his podcast, he also talks about this. Like, it's been a big transition for him to go from being the full-time working parent to now being the full-time parent, just being home with all of us. So that company getting started, I think, was a version of him also trying to fulfill that void that wasn't there anymore of having a job.
The desire to provide.
To provide, to serve, to, fulfill his purpose. And I want to say after a few months, or a few weeks, there was a lot of big projects happening, and now his time was getting caught up on doing this all the time. And I started feeling like there was a shift happening, like a divide. And, I mentioned to him, I said, the whole point of us coming here and having these women do everything, it wasn't so I could then be by myself with the baby. It's so we could be together with the baby. So I asked him if he could please take a step back. I was like, I'm not asking you to leave the company or not do what you're doing, but I'm asking, can the hours be taken back a bit so that you can be here? Like you can be here present so we can take trips, so we can do things. Because the way they were doing, everything being online, it was just taking up so many hours of like, we couldn't really leave our area or go do other things because, I have a call today, or, I have this, or, I have a meeting, or no, I'm recording this, or I have to edit, or I have, like, there was work to be done behind the scenes. And I'm like, okay, then what's the point of us being here, not having jobs, and where now you're like on a computer or on a phone most of your time? I said, this isn't how I envisioned the first year of postpartum. I said, look, after the year, like, you're free. Go do whatever you want. But I was like, I'm just asking for a year. I was like, I know it seems like a long time, but I was like, it's very short. It goes by very fast. Like, I just want you to be fully present with no other responsibilities for just a year. I said, after the year, you're free to do whatever you want.
And now that I look back at it, I think it's a learning experience of how to that you can do everything that she was just saying. You can do online, and you can do it moving at the same time. Like I thought a lot of times of like, hey, I needed to be here at this location, locked in, fully present, and I can still be fully present if we're out in the mountains on a trip, and it's all about time management. So no excuses, but it was a learning experience for me, because now transitioning out of a structured military, more than 9 to 5, but like there was rigidity on how that looked. I brought that structure into this digital realm. In reality, a lot of people are coming into this realm because of the flexibility and the ability to have more freedom in that realm. So looking back at it, that's why we're kicking off again. We've learned a lot. We've experienced a ton. A lot of the things that we've experienced have validated why we need to be doing this more and sharing and opening up ourselves to help people, and also to hopefully inspire
Other
families
to live outside of what we have known for decades to be normal.
To challenge the norm, because the reality is, in order for us to expand deeper and grow, the existing structures have to break down.
Yeah.
Right? For rebirth, there must be death. And so that's where we're at now, right? That we are ready to challenge our previous beliefs. We're ready to challenge our own mindsets and open up even more into what we were doing in the past, to put ourselves out there, not just for us, but for our kids too, because we want our kids to see that. Like, I want my sons and my daughters to see, hey, dad and mom have been challenging themselves. Yes, we live this beautiful life of freedom and we have a lot of time, but we also want to challenge ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah. And so he took his step back from this company that he has started with his friend.
February of 2024.
And we had discussed around that time, I said, hey, now would be a good time for us to jump back into our podcast. Me and Alex are very different. I am a planner. I'm like, I need a schedule. I need when are we doing what? Like, let's lock it in. And he very much sometimes just goes with the flow. And I have
now I'm going to let go with the flow.
I don't know. Okay. I argue that he has always gone with the flow. It's just the military provided the structure for him, but he himself doesn't provide that structure for himself. So I'm usually the one who provides the structure, and he like flows within that. And obviously, this depends like what we're talking about in our relationship. But when it comes to like doing things on a certain time, like I'm the one who's like, all right, let's set the schedule. This is the tempo. Let's go. But anyway, so when I mentioned the podcast, and I told him this because one thing I know is like I have to allow him to go his pace for things like this, or else I feel like I'm dragging him along. And I feel like I'm dragging the whole 6'2", 200-pound him, literally like on my back, dragging him along. So when I mentioned the podcast, I told myself, I said, I am not going to set a schedule. I'm not going to set the tempo. I'm not going to set the structure. He needs to come to me and say, I'm ready to record. I said, if he doesn't come to me and tells me he's ready to record, we're not going to do it. So I will say for the last year, I've been waiting for him to come.
Which this has never been communicated.
Yeah.
She's never told me, I'm waiting for you to come to me.
Yes, I did. When I mentioned the podcast back in that day, I said, tell me what day we're recording and I'll be there.
Okay.
And that was the last thing I told him. And I said, I'm not going to tell him when to record. I said, you tell me what day, what time, and I will show up and we will record. And I was like, and we'll do this. And he never did. And that was, and then shortly after that, then we got alerted that we had to move and this, and that's where like everything just like.
So let's dive into that because that is the point of our story.
Well, yeah, we're gonna dive into that next. But all this to say that I've been wanting to do this for a year, and granted, Alex sometimes needs a little fire lit under his ass to get to.
You know, I was thinking as she was talking right now that. What it was that I was hesitant about and that she wasn't providing me is she wanted to start the podcast. I personally had not sat down and thought about a direction or specificity around topics. And
you
so
lately, like that we always we just literally turned on the camera and talked about something.
I didn't like that. I want to at least before going in, hey, this is what we're talking about. Like so she now has. So this is what she brought to the table.
For those of you just listening, I had to make Alex.
It's just a bullet point. Like,
a bullet point.
I want to talk about this. It's not like a script. It's just like, hey, I want to cover 2023 to 2025. Maybe hit this point or maybe hit that point, and then we go with the flow. I love going with the flow, but I at least need to see something to say. Okay, let me go back into the files. Because
his files are archived. That's
what they're archived.
They're archived. He has to pull them out of the archive. Where I'm just like, I remember it. Let's go.
So she did this the last couple of days, and I'm good. Let's do it. Let's move. You just tell me what needs to happen, and let's make it happen. So now we're making it happen, and we're understanding each other a little bit better. And I think that's the coolest thing about working together. When you're able to get past maybe some differences, if you're able to look at it as a learning experience, we are learning more about each other.
And then I think the big second part of this was he was the one doing the uploading, the editing, and all of that. And that has always been one of the things that he hates the most about podcasting. It's the same reason his own personal podcast has been on pause, but that's coming back as well, if it hasn't already by the time this posts. And so what I told him, I said, look, do not care about this podcast being polished. This is just about getting it out there. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about it being the number one podcast of blah, blah, blah. I said, let's record and let's post.
So there's no edits on this. So if you hear my wife fart or burp or... I'm just kidding.
So there's that. And I said, look, let's just start it. Like, let's start it. Let's record. Let's post. As time goes on, if... then, there is the space or the opportunity comes that we can polish this and we can make it that way, then we will. But the whole point is just to get it out there. And in the past, when I mentioned that to him, he was just like very against that. Like he was still like, no, like you got to polish, like you got to.
There's this, but I've come to understand with myself that like in my head, I see it as a certain way. It has to be in that way. And what happens is, I call it perfectionism. When we have that standard internally and we create it, we don't take action.
Yes.
And so in my own life, within the work that I've done, I was a coach and stepped away from it. when I went to go push more projects or start projects because it was in my head a certain way, I didn't take the action. It was always in the planning phase. And in this world, reality is if we're always in the planning phase, we're not gonna take action. We're not gonna accomplish anything. We're not gonna execute. And within growth requires action. Growth in anything, mental, spiritual, emotional, physical. So,
and me, I was on the other spectrum where I was like, I don't care if it's perfect. I said, I'm ready to do it. Like, let's do it. This is not about being perfect. This is not about being the top 10. Like, this isn't about any of that. I said, I just want to share. I want to talk. I think that we have a lot to say, including him. And I was like, we have to do this. So, yeah, obviously, after you go through a few life experiences, you get to the point of like, wait, that's right. You don't need perfectionism. You don't need this to be polished. You just need to get your story out there. So that's what we're doing now. So we're not going to get edits, at least not this series.
And I mean, quite frankly, let's just say the elephant in the room. I wouldn't say elephant. It's not, because people that know us, our son Liam passed away. So it's opened our eyes that we just need to do it instead of just talking about it. Be about it.
Yeah.
And we'll dive into Liam's story
because you just don't know how much time you have on this earth, and you're keeping your gifts to yourself and hiding yourself in a closet. And it's like the world is waiting to see all of us shine like a light bulb and all of us shine as bright as a star. And if you don't start, then you're not able to share that magic
with be a light bulb.
Everyone around you. You want to be a star?
I want to be a sun.
A sun, okay. I mean, every star is a sun to something.
Absolutely.
So you're my sun. Look at you, wearing yellow.
Boom. So that 2024 February, I released with Jack, my partner at the time. We did a fatherhood summit. It was amazing. 27 men. We interviewed these men on different perspectives of fatherhood, and they all are coaches themselves or have inspired or working with people to make them better men and fathers. So that was the theme around that. And we were coming up on our lease end, but the end of our lease.
So like 60 days or maybe 90 days before our lease, our landlord reached out to us like, hey, do you guys plan on renewing? And we were like, yeah. And we had talked about him. He doesn't live in the country. We had met him a few times. We said, hey, we have plans of just traveling the island. We won't even be in the apartment, but we want to keep it because we don't want to take all our stuff. We had bought like all this, little things. Like the apartment came furnished, but you start buying like little things that you prefer. So we had a lot of stuff in the apartment. And what we spoke to him about was that my older sister, Catherine, was going to come move to Dominican Republic, and she would live in the apartment while we traveled. If you know any place that's tropical, humid, these are not places where you want to leave your stuff and leave the apartment empty and shut for months at a time. You will come back to mold. You will come back to your stuff being destroyed. So the one thing I was like, the apartment cannot stay empty. Either we move out or somebody comes and moves in so they can take care of the apartment. We also wanted to continue to employ the woman who we had asked to come work for us. So I was like, that's also a way for her to keep her employment as we travel the island. We can pay her, to take care of the apartment while my sister stays there. And he said, yeah, great. It's your apartment. Do whatever you want with it. And I was like, okay, sweet. So that was our plan. Our first plan was we were going to go travel the island while my sister...
And learn more about the island, because for those that have listened to our previous podcast, we had talked about early on in our marriage that Dominican Republic was going to be our retirement home. It was going to be where we settled down, and we moved here. We made it happen. But we wanted to see
other parts
to see, hey, maybe this isn't just the place for us. Maybe there's other places. So that was the initial vision when we were like, hey, we're going to travel, was to explore Dominican Republic, because there's waterfalls, there's jungle, like it has all the climates, different climates.
Yep.
You just have to travel and experience it. And then a few weeks later, after we had confirmed and asked the questions and he had said yes, he came back and sent me a message saying, hey, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to renew the lease.
Like, you guys got to go.
You have to go. And I asked him why, and he gave me a few answers, which I don't feel like it needs to be.
Yeah, we don't need to go into the details of it. It doesn't matter. The point is, we were like, okay, well, since we cannot renew our lease, then we're going to leave. And at the time, we didn't know that in Dominican Republic, the law is like it's very hard to kick your tenants out. So even though if you end their contract, they can stay living there for months later, and obviously paying you month by month. Like in that, at that point, it would change to month by month, but you could stay there till you find a place. Like it's not like in the what we're used to from the United States. Like your contract ends, you need to be out.
Yeah.
Like you need to be.
And we didn't ask for
and we didn't ask. We got prepared to leave on our contract date. We're like, okay, then our last day here's this date. We bought our flights. We were ready to go. Well, before that, but point is, we started looking at other apartments. So we started looking in this neighborhood. We started looking at other places, and I just kept telling him, I was like, I don't feel like moving from here to another place right now, and we just weren't finding anything that we wanted, not within the budget, not within the place. And I was just like, it felt like we were working against, like going upstream. And I was like, something isn't sitting right about this move. Like, I don't know. I just don't feel like doing it. And we kept going back and forth. Like I said, we looked at some places online, but just nothing was moving for us. And I don't know if you want to speak a little bit on that.
Well, no, just what for us, both being in the military previously, I personally believe that we are pretty adaptable when we're hit with any type of news. It can be bad, it can be good, whatever the case may be, we're pretty adaptable. And so once we got hit with that news, we shifted. Okay, let's try to find something here in Encuentro. Let's try to find something that we can still. Your sister, she had already committed to quitting her job, coming down here, starting over for her to explore her own growth journey, self-development journey. And so we were like, hey, we communicated that was something that we were going to do on our end. So I was trying to stay within integrity that we both were. And then it just hit us. We sat down one night, we were talking, and like, let's just travel the world. Let's just do this. Let's just travel.
We're like, we always talked about it. We were doing the RV, and we didn't leave the country because then we had this responsibility of paying the RV and storing it if we did leave. And it was just like, it didn't make sense. And I was like, we are in the perfect place to sell it all, get rid of it all, have nothing left behind, and then what we make monthly will go into travel. And I was like, and our baby's big enough, like by then Liam was like 9 months. And I was like, this is the perfect time for us to just travel. And we like ruminated on it for a few days, and then we both looked at each other and we're like, yeah, let's do it. Like, screw it, let's do it. What are we waiting for?
And I think within that flexibility, anybody that's listening, you are the only person holding you back. And so we can sit here, anybody can, and make an excuse. Well,
for everything.
I can't do it because of this. I can't do it because of this. I can't do it because of this. When we committed to, we're going to travel, within a matter of a week and a half, we were already selling everything in our house. Yep. Everything. We took pictures, we listed, we committed, started moving things out of the kids' room, the bare bones. Like, what is it that the essentials that you need to live within your room, within our room, within the house? We're moving it up. We made a cell room.
Yep.
And
we moved all our stuff into one room, and we're like, everything in this room is for sale. It all goes. So we just had people coming throughout the week to our apartment. I was coming. We had a minivan. I would fill up the minivan with our stuff, bring it to this side because there's some people who didn't have vehicles, and I would tell, I'm going to be at this place for these 2 hours, bring cash, selling all the stuff. And we just got it done. 2 weeks later, the landlord comes back and it's like, never mind, you guys don't have to move. And we're like, well, too late. We're leaving.
Because the biggest thing for him, I will say, the one thing that was like really sticking point is the electricity. I mentioned the electricity.
He had included electricity, which is not common in this country. We like joke about like you have to be crazy to include electricity in this country and rent because electricity is very expensive. And being people who don't live here, we obviously use the air conditioners. And even though we were reserved, like only using them at night, it's still a lot more than a local would. So his electricity bill for us was really high. We also had a cold tub.
Yeah, we had a cold tub.
And a hot tub.
So where I'm going with this is, I told him, I sent him a message, and the back and forth was like, I don't have an issue paying.
Yeah.
I never had an issue paying the electricity. If you were having a hard time, you should have let me know.
And we offered when we found out that he had an issue. We said that we were like, we will pay the electricity, and he said no.
As soon as I said that, he's like, okay, you can stay. And I was like, man, we already made this decision.
Yeah.
We've already it's already the ship has sailed, and we're committed, and so we move forward with that. But the key, the moral of what I was trying to show you is that when you commit and you don't care what is in your way, you execute, things can happen. And I felt like straight on Gary V. Gary V teaches you to go and do yard selling and all this other stuff. We were just straight making it happen. Dropping things off. Even
our minivan, like everything got sold.
If it didn't fit within our we had at the time we had 6 suitcases to leave. We had 6 suitcases
because one big thing is it's very easy to ship anything in. It's not as easy to ship it out.
No.
So we had to get down to whatever stays with us has to fit in a suitcase for us to be able to take it back to the States. And obviously we would have to pay for all the extra luggage. But it was cheaper for us since we didn't have bulk items. Like we didn't have couches, TVs, none of that. It was easier for us to just carry it in suitcases versus like having to pay for shipping. Because the shipping containers, like the way that works, it wasn't going to work for us.
And 3 suitcases that we had were a lot of my Navy memorabilia that I brought down here because I thought that this was a forever home.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to part ways with that because there is a lot of, I went to, we had
photo albums, kids stuff that we just didn't want to get rid of, like baby clothes that I had from all the kids from like the first one that I was like, I'm not going to let go of the stuff. And we talked about leaving the storage unit here, but we honestly thought we would never come here.
Like we're
done.
We're never coming back.
We're never coming back. Like, let's ship it all to New York where my parents still live. They've been in the same apartment for like 30 something years. So I was like, they're not going anywhere. Let's just put it in a storage unit. And also New York being like, an international hub. I said, doesn't matter where we move in the world. If we ever need to come back, we can always fly into New York City. We can always go back to our storage unit. So there's no need for us to keep it in a country where it would be harder to fly into, at least for us. So I was like, just keep it in New York. And that was like what we went with. And
so the decision was made early March, late March, early April. And June we bought flights because our lease was up early June. Yeah. We bought flights and we flew to New York City. We're not going to get into the travels today, but I think that one of the lessons that I learned and myself was being in the United States and how we operate in the United States. We had to do some deposits here. And so we had a little bit of a challenge, a battle with our landlord.
There was 3 deposits that had to be put down. We didn't get any of them. And it was ridiculous because you would think that we damaged and put holes through the walls and like destroyed the apartment. No. That was not the case. Like we had women who cleaned every day. It was super clean when we turned it in. All of that stuff. Basically, the guy kept our money.
It was a cultural experience. Like we learned even more about the culture here,
and the way they operate,
and how they operate. And so
it's basically like there's a nick on the wall. All right, you don't get any of your deposits. Too bad. And they do that because they know that it's more difficult here. And not knowing the system, and they know that we don't know the system, and we just didn't have the time. He knew we were leaving the country, like all these things.
Yeah, like in the United States and other countries that are, I won't say more structure, but they have more structure around this.
There is structure and there is law around here, but it has to be with you being in person. And I think that the biggest thing here was him knowing that we weren't going to be, and that he wasn't here either. No. There was no way. I tried to fight it. I even came back after I went to New York, and I spent 5 days here trying to get it back. And basically what it came down to is he's not in the country, so we can't do anything about it. And that's what it came down to.
And a lot of the landlords, they actually use the deposit money right away. Yeah. So that's something that the reason why they don't give it back is because they don't have it. And
which is not supposed to be like that. There's supposed to be a separate account that they keep it in. But like we said, lessons learned. We learned that one of the typical cultural things here is whenever you leave a deposit, you live that out in months and you don't pay it. So like, for instance, you would stay past your lease. So we would have stayed into July, August, September, and just not pay rent those months. and then you live out your deposits. Basically, that's the correct way of doing it, because most people here know that once you give the landlord that money, you're not going to get it back. I'm not going to say that is the case for everywhere. Obviously, there's people here who are in integrity and do things the right way, but just letting you know, whenever you leave places like the United States and you come to live in countries like Dominican Republic, that things just operate differently.
And it's important just to educate yourself. It's
Yeah.
not about, like, I'm not telling you, put it on your shoulder.
Yeah, but it's different. So that was our experience. Anyhow, we went to New York. And the only reason we flew to New York was, one, all the stuff that we talked about that we had to put in storage. We wanted to go do that personally ourselves. And then the second thing is, when we knew that we were flying overseas, we were looking at the cheapest places. We were going to initially try to do it from here. But once we looked at the flights, we don't live by a major international airport. It would have required us traveling. Then we had all the stuff, and it turned into this whole thing of like, look, the easiest and cheapest way to do this is to fly to New York City, fly out of JFK, and then also leave our stuff there. And we didn't even have the flights bought to where we were going till after we got to New York. Once we got to New York, then we started looking at flights and where we were going. We had talked about so many places that we were going, and that's not how we ended up traveling. But we will talk about that in the next episode. This episode is just mostly about closing that gap of 2025 till now. We had a really good time in Florida. Once we knew we were leaving, I remember at first we were just like chilling in the campground, just going about daily life. And once we knew that we were leaving the United States, we ended up doing a Disney trip.
Yeah, so
with all the
we're
kids.
going back to 2023.
Yeah, going back to 2023.
We knew we were moving here.
Yeah.
And so then we decided, hey, we were in Orlando. I don't know why we picked Orlando.
No, we weren't. Remember, we weren't in Orlando. We ended up going because of the Disney World.
I know why we went to Orlando too, though. There was a Veterans Hospital.
The Veterans Hospital, and I think it was a camping world as well.
It's a camping world.
We needed so many things fixed in the RV that were broken. And we're like, okay, let's find a nice little place. It was also the location where we had that guy's piece of land, that it was really cheap to be there, and it was really nice. It was like, it had a little pond.
It looked amazing.
Yeah, it looked beautiful, and it was very peaceful in a super quiet neighborhood. But like within a few minutes, you could be in the city, in the middle of everything. Yeah. We also had promised the kids Disneyland, Disney World, because we hadn't been. And we were like, well, while we're in Florida, I said, we can try. I said, we don't know yet. I said, but we will try to see if we can make it a Disney World and Universal Studios and all that stuff. Once we knew we were coming to Dominican Republic, we were like, all right, let's make this happen for the kids.
And to go even further back, I know I've said this in other podcasts, but when I got out of the military in 2022, I didn't have, most people have like VA disability, they have things that are already set up, they've already started that process. I got abruptly kicked out of the military, right, for not taking the COVID vaccine. And so for that whole year, that whole time that we were traveling in the RV, we were just living off of our savings and Giselle's income that she was receiving. And so slowly by slowly, our savings was diminishing. And we were going into it. And then fortunately, like once we just took the leap of faith, we said, hey, we're going to DR. This is when we're doing it. We bought the flights. We set it up. The universe cleared its way, and I got back paid for my time waiting. And so that with that money, we both agreed. You know, the kids they're resilient. You know, we can put our own beliefs and limiting beliefs in our children, but they're resilient. They have adaptability just like us adults, and so we wanted to reward them or even just show them a good time by taking them to Disney. So we did 5-day Disney pass, 5 days. And I promise you, I wasn't prepared for it. I thought that it would be easy. I thought that it would be just a walk in the park. It was hot. There was a lot of walking, which was great, like good for our bodies. She's 8 months pregnant.
No, I'm not, because this is May.
May.
He was born in August.
Okay. It felt like
no, I wasn't 8.
She looked like she was 8 months pregnant.
Okay, I probably did.
No,
I was a little less than 8 months pregnant. But I remember we bought this like used double stroller just for Disney World because we knew that the girls were not gonna be able to like walk that much. So like I went on Facebook and I found this double bob stroller for like $100. She's like, the clips don't work. I'm like, I don't care. I just need a stroller to like, if the stroller can roll and the seats aren't broken, like that's all I need. And we went and bought the stroller, which we ended up bringing here, never used it. But yeah, we went and bought a stroller literally just for Disney World because we're like, it's gonna be cheaper to just buy our own stroller than to do the rentals every day at the parks. So we bought the stroller. The girls used it. The boys used it. Everybody took naps in that stroller. Like at one point, all four of them would be in there, and we're glad that we did because it was just so hot and humid and so much walking. And it wasn't like if my kids did that one day, they'd be able to hack it. But we knew we were doing the parks like 5 days back to back. I think we took 1 day break. We broke it up, and then we did like.
And we've been fairly active. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we're like a workout fit fan that we're
we're always outdoors.
We're outdoors, walking and moving around. So the kids, they do hold their own for the most part. But Disney was at a different level,
and they were younger too.
And they were a lot younger.
Yeah, like Lumi was 3.
Yeah.
3. They were 3 and 5, 7.
So Wednesday hit. After Monday and Tuesday, we had so much fun and a lot of walking. Wednesday hit. We all decided that we needed to take a little break, which wasn't the plan.
We took a whole day off from all the parks. We're like, okay, we need a break. This was a lot, and then we went back and finished our 5-day thing, and that was like a week or two before we flew here.
And that was an amazing end to close out the
United States for us.
Because both can tell you that we have not been back in a living capacity since 2022.
He was there in 23 for the 10 days, or 24 for 10 days. I was only there for 5 days. Liam only was in the United States his whole life for 5 days. So we haven't been back in 2 years. And we haven't really lived there in 2 years. And the further we get from that, the more it doesn't feel like home for us. And granted, like that's still where our citizenship is. We're forever grateful that is our country, and that is where our citizenship is from, and that we can still, call ourselves Americans and all that. But we're also realizing that there's so much more to the world to enjoy, to experience. When you get outside of the United States bubble, the United States of America bubble, like there's just so much out there.
And we still require a bunch of services that are connected to our military experience. So here in the Dominican Republic, when we moved here because we knew that we were going to be able to be seen, see doctors, and be able to be seen for our military time, and working through, for me, for some physical ailments that I still am struggling and challenged by with today.
So like 6 months after we got here, we knew that there was clinics here, and we had seen them around, but we never like sought it out. And we were just sitting on the beach one day having breakfast with our friends, and they're recording drone footage like right on the beach. And I'm like, Alex, those are the people. Like they had a huge banner.
American military veterans.
Yeah.
They were doing a retreat for veterans and helping facilitate healing. And like we said, we knew that it was there. We just didn't know how
it worked.
And we were really tied up into Liam and just integrating, so we didn't really look much. But it came to our front door, so to speak. And so we asked the questions. They gave us the information and said, hey, meet us at this clinic on this date. And funny enough, it was where we were supposed to be moving. Costanbar, when we first got here.
Yeah, so it was in the same community that we were first checking out, that we were supposed to move to when we initially got here. The clinic was there, or is there, and we ended up going, and it became a weekly thing for us, and we were forever grateful because this is through the Foreign Medical Program for veterans. You're able to see these clinics. They exist in different countries outside of the USA. And
if you're a military veteran listening to this, and I read this recently, there's 54,000 plus American military veterans here in this country enrolled in this program. So there's established care throughout this country.
And it's not just here. They're in Punta Cana, they're in Santiago, they're in Santo Domingo. We were just in Jarabacoa for 2 weeks, and a brand new clinic opened there, and we went and got seen there. Like literally, you just go into the clinic, And if they have availability, you will get seen the same day, sometimes next day.
And quite frankly, we're being treated
way better
in the United States, and this is not like
getting treated way better here
than the United States. We're not waiting weeks for appointments. The level of care that we're receiving is top notch. It's pretty good care.
And there's services that are outside of what just medical care is that you can also get seen for. And the reason that they're able to do that is because the way the budgeting and all that works for these clinics in these countries is different than the USA. So like in the USA, I don't think that they will give you massages and facials and feed you a meal and sometimes even put you up in a hotel room. And these clinics all do that.
It's the quality of life, right? Because
they focus on everything, not just what do you need, what's your ailment, here's your prescription, all right, go home. Yeah. Like here's like, oh, you're traveling far, okay, we can cover your gas money. Oh, you're doing this, we'll put you up in a room. Oh, what else? Like they're taking care of so much more that honestly we love going to these clinics here. And the few times I went to the VA hospitals in the States, it's not that I had a negative experience, but it is not the same level of care. It's just not.
Well, I mean, for me, my experience of just waiting weeks for appointments, and you know, I have a lot of physical ailments, back issues.
He has to be going like multiple times.
Brain tumors, but I need to be seen right away. It's not something that can wait weeks. So here, going every single week and even multiple times a week, it's helped me thrive in my healing journey. It's always a continuous journey, but it's where I need to be, where I want to be. So that's why we came here.
Yeah. And then once we started traveling, we were able to do, we had some telehealth appointments that we could do online. Obviously, the physical stuff, you can't do it, but we were able to continue our appointments throughout our entire travels through online with the clinic. So we never stopped. And then we came back and we went right back to the clinic again, now physically. And that's where we spent our first month when we got here. We were going to the clinic daily. And that was amazing to be able to get seen for all these things every single day, just a 5-minute walk where, I don't think any veteran can do that in the United States of America. So
do you feel complete? I feel like, because you entered, that was a perfect, beautiful transition of our first month back here.
Yes.
And being in the clinic and getting the services. We weren't just being seen once a week. We were seen every single day. And the clinic, knowing our situation with our son, and we'll dive even more into it.
They were extremely supportive. Extremely supportive.
They prioritized our care and opening up availabilities for psychologists, not just for us, but if our children needed it, for me, my physical side, like I was having some back issues and working through that. So a beautiful transition.
And the clinic is a 2-minute walk from the beach.
2 minutes. So
here's the clinic. You walk down the street, you have the beach. So it's also in an amazing location. But yeah, that was our catch up of what happened from May 5th, 2023 till today.
I'd like to, just for me to complete this thought, is like why we didn't do the podcast. I think that there was a force that we didn't see.
And we'll talk about that.
That needed us to hone in on family, that hone in on each other, hone in on the experience to really be prepared for what was to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, once we were traveling, we'll talk about it, but it was just insanity. So when I think about the last 8 months, or like it's like the 8 months of travel, I'm not saying it's impossible. We could have made it happen, but that was all like so new and so much learning that I could see there being a lot of frustration and coordination and all of that to just try to get the podcast out. It would have felt like an uphill battle. And we have very much been agreeing and settling more into the flow of life and the flow of things and allowing things to just feel very natural before we do it. And in true alignment, there's so many times that you want to do something. And for some people, maybe it is about the uphill battle. But, in human design, we are projectors, both of us. We're both emotional projectors. We're both 4/6 profiles. We have a lot of similarities. And for us, it's all about waiting for that invitation. And sometimes it's not a verbal invitation, it's also an energetic invitation. So a year ago, the podcast energetically, although we brought it back up and it was there, we neither of us really felt it. And like I said, even for me, usually I'm a person who's like, let's go, let's do it. I'm gonna set the schedule. I was just at a place of surrender. I'm like, if you come to me, we will do it. If you don't, then it's out of my hands, and I'm not dragging this by myself. Like, we both need to show up and want to be there and want to do this.
Yeah, my whole life has been, I've been told what to do, when to do it. Even, I grew up in a military family, and so my dad lived the same way that I had taken on and being in the military myself. So these last few years since 2022, late 21, has been about just the extreme opposite of what I've always known. And we will talk about that, each end of the spectrum has pros and cons, and that there's an importance to intertwining both ends, structure with softness, right? Because at the end of the day, this period in my life, as it's been great to be able to unravel, there's been a lot of things internally that I'm not 100% satisfied.
Yeah.
If that makes it.
I mean, we both came to the realization, we talked about this in one of our last podcasts, that I don't think anybody wants to live their life with nothing to do. That I don't believe that for a second. If someone does absolutely nothing, there is a part of them that is miserable, that is unfulfilled, and isn't happy, because we all come here with purpose. We all come here for a mission. And if we aren't living and fulfilling that, we're going to feel that emptiness inside of us. And even if we can't put words to it, maybe we don't have awareness to it. And I believe that for men, just like women, like, we all have that. An individual, like, yes, we have our purpose as a family, as a couple, as in partnership, but there's also his individual purpose, his individual mission in this life, just like I have mine. And we have to pursue those to be completely fulfilled. And sometimes that means going through really hard things, or things that we label as hard and very difficult things, for us to up level and hit the next evolution and the next evolution of our lives. So all of this to say is, this has all been like 3 years of experiences, conversations, doing and undoing and unraveling to reach this point of we're back. And we are very clear now which way to steer our ship.
And we both now understand too that even in our individual purposes, they can be intertwined in the sense, like, you have to get creative. It's a lot of people that I've worked with, there's this belief that, okay, I have my purpose, she has her purpose, yes, we're in a relationship, and they kind of just walk their own paths. And you can walk your own path, but also walk your own path in
holding hands
and supporting each other and integrating and communicating. It requires a deeper level of communication, a deeper level of understanding, of creativity, of awareness. So that's where we're at now, is we are walking along each other, committed to our individual paths and our family path, and being creative and being open and being honest with each other.
Yeah. So thanks for sticking around this long. If you have, the next few episodes, we're going to get into our travels, and we are not travel bloggers. Everybody should know that. So obviously we're going to be going into more the deeper parts of what every month represented to us. And it will be the storytelling also of Liam's life. And we'll close it out with what happened in the end and where we're at with all of that, emotionally, physically. So yes, if you're interested in this series, stick around for the next few episodes that will all be part of our travel series and the storytelling of Liam's life.
All right. Bye.
See ya.